Hi everyone, Tim Brown. Welcome back to my Apple Podcast, the podcast that makes a personal connection to everything Apple. For this episode, I want to cover the Photos app. I think Apple is finally coming through on its promise to provide continuity to our overall experience between our iOS devices and the Mac. And I think the Photos app is beginning to improve upon that, but not completely. Let's take a look. So here's the Photos app. As you can see along the top, I have all photos, faces, panoramas, videos. Other categories along the top will include time-lapse, slow motion videos, and so forth. And then under that you have my albums. And so you can see the categories are a lot more simplified than before when you had events. Let's go ahead and also walk through the features. So I'm going to actually just pull up a photo as if I'm going to edit it. And what's nice are there some really nice improved designs in terms of the minimalist interface. And you see the similarity between iOS. For example, when you go to edit a photo, you'll see that the menu looks very similar. You have enhance, you have rotate, you have crop, you have filters that are built in, which are great, but you also have adjustment tools, and this is where you will see the similarity with iOS, where you can actually use the trackpad to scroll back and forth to make adjustments in highlights or shadows and so forth. I'm basically just scrolling back and forth with my fingers, the same way you would if you were on your iPhone. So there's some continuity here in terms of the design and how you edit your photos. Along the top too, you have a heart where you can select your favorites that you can access later. You can also update the information on the photo, and you can choose the plus symbol to add to albums and or to projects. Very similar to iPhoto, but the whole interface has been simplified considerably. It's easier to use, and not only that, when you look at your iOS device, you see that all of your albums now correspond more seamlessly with your iOS device, which is really nice. Now, one thing I want to clarify though for you, for those of you who are downloading from iPhoto and you're switching over, there's some confusion that I want to clarify. When you first open the Photos app, you will find that iPhoto is now categorized into a folder. So even though the line up here says My Albums, they're not necessarily all albums, because iPhoto events have been grouped into a folder. The folder is indicated by the little thumbnails that you see inside. So whenever you see multiple sets encased inside an album, that's actually a folder and not an album. And that may confuse you because we have folders on our desktop and we're accustomed to putting images and folders within folders, but in this case it doesn't quite work like that. Folders have a specific function within the new Photos app, and this may have to do with the transition from iPhoto to Photos. So while all these photos down below are albums, iPhoto Events is actually a folder. When I click on that folder, then I have all the albums inside that folder. Just to clarify that. Another thing I want to clarify is that you cannot actually add photos inside a folder. So for example, let's just say I'm going to go to View and I'm going to show Sidebar. Sidebar has always been a nice feature to have when you are organizing your photos and you're dragging things back and forth. It's nice to have a reference on the side. So let's just say I want to set up a new folder. And that folder appears right where the albums are. Again, it seems confusing, but okay, I'm just going to put flowers or just any old category. And now if I go open that folder, it's empty. It's now ready for me to add content. The only challenging thing here is though that you cannot add photos to a folder. You can only add albums to a folder. And that's the one thing that you have to understand about this. So instead of importing a photo into this folder, I need to set up an album within it. So I'm going to go to New Empty Album. And then maybe just call it Roses or something. And then click OK. Now I have a place to store photos. That's how it works. So for example, Let me just go and find an image here that I can import into this new folder that I set up. So I'm going to scroll here along the side and then find flowers. And I'm going to click that album that I set up within the flowers folder. And I'm just going to take this image down below and I'm just going to drag it into roses. And you see that it's accepting that image, but it will not accept it if I drag it over the flowers folder. You see it's not responding because folders cannot hold images. But if I put it under roses, then voila, I have an image inside my album. So folders are designed to hold albums. Albums cannot hold folders. And folders cannot hold images. But if you want to make use of this feature, particularly with the desktop version of the app, you just have to keep that in mind. It will show up on your phone. For example, let me go ahead and pull up photos on my iPhone, and you'll see if I scroll down, I have iPhoto Events, which is a folder. When I open it, you'll see all of my albums under that particular folder. And when you set up your own folders using your desktop, I set up another one that I called Suzette Jelinek, which is my wife, and you can see I have different categories of albums within that folder as well. The only drawback though is that while having a folder with albums inside it is very useful, you cannot do this on your phone. You can only set up a new album when using your iOS device. You cannot set up a folder using your iOS device. So the benefit of having photos for the desktop is that yes, you have the option to set up a folder with albums inside it, but you cannot set up folders using your iOS device with albums inside it. So that's the limitation, and that's where I think the seamlessness falls short, because I feel like you should be able to do the same thing on your iOS device that you do on your desktop, and you cannot do this. So this could be that maybe the transition from iPhoto to the Photos app is they're still working through the kinks, that in order to make the transition seamless from iPhoto to Photos, they had to maintain a little bit of the infrastructure from the previous version of the app in order to have a more seamless experience for the user, whether they're downloading photos for the first time or migrating from iPhoto. And so that's really the only limitation that I see. Otherwise, I love the improved design. I love the new interface. I love the improved seamlessness. I mean, now everything is in the cloud, and you don't really need to sync with iTunes anymore. When you sync to iTunes and you're using iCloud to back up all your photos and to sync across devices, you won't even have an option to sync in iTunes. So iTunes is not needed anymore. And that's the other thing to bear in mind about the seamlessness of the Apple experience from here on out. Everything's going to be pretty much cloud-based as things go forward, and I think you should keep that in mind as the app moves forward. Anyway, I just wanted to clarify that specifically with for those of you who are migrating from iPhoto to the Photos app. This is Tim Brown, and thanks for tuning in to this episode of my Apple Podcast. Check me out next time.